Hey Michigan, Dr. Lewis here. I was up a couple weeks ago, really enjoyed my stay, was disappointed that the ponds weren't frozen so I couldn't go skating, but next time I'll bring my cross-country skis. And I know there's someone from Bloomington watching as well, but what I want to do is talk about the genesis of health today, but also introduce or reintroduce the program to reinforce what we do, which is different than other wellness programs or even your traditional physician. So I have this slide up here, the health disease continuum. And really, when you go to your traditional doctor, it's, are you sick or not? And it's an on or off switch. Either are you not. But really, you reside on a continuum. And this line of demarcation here says that to the right, far up the continuum, now we probably can diagnose you with a condition. Okay? Or maybe not, depending on the skill of the doctor. You may just have some nagging thing, some stomach discomfort, not sleeping well, chronic pain. Yeah, take this, do that, you'll get over it, but that's not really a diagnosis. But so many people are here, yet in this range here, before diagnosis, you have chronic disease risk. You have poor health, and you have symptoms. Could be patchy dry skin, could be a cataract in your eye, which is really not a good sign. So there are many things that we look at. So what we do with our program, and if you're getting your blood drawn in a week or so, or you got the blood drawn today, is between the blood and the survey, we place you very accurately on the health disease continuum. And we're not interested in whether you're over this side or this side, we just want to know where you are, and our goal is to move you down that continuum, help you get overcome some of the symptoms you have, make you feel better, and we'll show you and prove to you that we're doing that because your physiological or blood labs, your biomarkers will improve. So I believe I did this demo up in Michigan at both places. If you saw me, thank you. If not, I'll do it again. But picture that I'm going to show you the backs of my two hands today, right now, and then fast forward 30 days, I'm going to show them to you again. And I want to explain the difference between what's going on in traditional medicine and what we're doing. So traditional medicine focuses on are you sick or are you healthy? They're looking at acute. We're looking at chronic on that sliding scale. So what I'm going to do with this hand is I'm going to take the pencil and jab it hard into the back of my hand. It'll be bloody, bruised, painful, okay? Now this pressure is like your labs are sky high, very high labs. Your doctor will say, oh my, you might have diabetes or heart disease or something else. That's sky high, okay? Now I'm gonna let this hand sit here and heal for 30 days and come back and chat with you. Now on this hand, I'm just going to take the back of the eraser and rub gently. But I'm going to rub gently for the next month, 24/7, and come and show you my hand. So in this case, your labs that we're drawing may be just slightly elevated. This, very elevated. This, slightly elevated, but consistently elevated. So now I come to you at the end of 30 days. This hand, I'd argue, I don't want to do the experiment, but I'd argue may have a little scar, but otherwise, and I'm sure I have them on my hand, being a hockey player, looks pretty good. But this one, I'm still rubbing, is absolutely rubbed raw, okay? But the labs are only up a little bit. But this rubbing is going on inside your vessel, in your brain, in your joints, on your skin, underneath your skin, if you have itchy or psoriasis or eczema, things like that. So that's the difference between what traditional medicine is doing. They're waiting for you to be sick and then solve it with surgeries, drugs, whatever. We're trying to prevent it, but we're not really doing prevention. We're just moving you down the continuum towards better health. And certainly things will be prevented and other things resolved. That's our goal. So let's now dive into the topic of the day. It is the genesis of health. And I have pictures of the mountains because basically I'm going to talk about minerals. And these high mountainous rocks are full of the building blocks of minerals. Okay, and so the next slide, what I show is, well, we'll get into a little preamble first before we really dive in. But what I'd like you folks to think about when you get into a discussion with your doctor or your provider is, where did you learn that? And I'm even asking you to ask your doctor. So for example, you go in and they say, you know, your blood pressure is elevated. Here, take this pill. Ask your doctor why it's elevated. And if the pill solves the reason why, and if it doesn't, guess what? You're on that pill for life, and those pills have side effects and consequences. So where did you learn that, doctor? And basically, now in medical school, they're being taught on how to prescribe things, not how to solve complex problems. So for example, most elevated blood pressure is called essential hypertension. That means elevated blood pressure of unknown cause. We put a man on the moon in 1969. You mean in 2021 we can't solve what's causing elevated blood pressure? I'd like to say that we know how to solve these. They're multifactorial, but we need to titrate back to the root. One of the things I say is, be not conformed to this world. Snacks, pop, soda, whatever we call it, not getting enough exercise, sitting in front of the tube, and that blue light actually keeps you awake and restless at nighttime. So a lot of children have a hard time sleeping. They wake up tired. They can't focus in school. Okay, I find here at National, we've got people using heavy cream, which is a superior creamer. Now, I see the Coffee Mate back in the refrigerator, and this is an inflammatory oil-based creamer. And it can, if you have joint pain, chronic fatigue, things like that, this type of creamer will actually keep it inflamed and make it harder for you to recover. Here's the problem we have in America. This is a chart of how much we spend for healthcare. And you can see the USA is way up on spending per capita compared to most other countries. Yet, a large number of countries, particularly the Koreans, Japanese, and the Europeans, this is life expectancy, live up to 4 years longer than us. So it's a very simple chart. When you look at the average of these, the more we spend, the shorter we live. So the surgeries aren't saving you. The chemo is not saving you long term. The medications aren't saving your life. Getting healthy and sliding down the health disease continuum is what's going to give you a longer, healthier life. So, composing only 5% of the population, American takes 50% of the pharmaceuticals. 10 times more. 10 times more, yet we're living shorter. What is that telling you about the pharmaceuticals you're taking? This is from, and we take the most painkillers because of excess surgeries and chemo and things of that nature. Rand Corporation projecting chronic diseases. So here we are in 2020, but the projection is for chronic disease instances to continue to go up, and that's confirmed by the CDC. So if our medical system and your doctor were solving chronic problems, wouldn't this be going down this way? So what it's telling you is what you're being treated for is not resolving your chronic problems. It's just managing symptoms, and you're still chronically ill. That doesn't change. So let's get into the whole genesis of health. Earth came before life. Life evolved from the earth. Life starts with water. Life uses what is in water. Why did I say that? This is a picture of some rocks on the mountaintop, and what we have is lichens. And lichens are at the beginning of breaking down rock into minerals. So the lichen break down the rock, the rain comes and sweeps the minerals into the water, and so on and so forth, and it winds up in the earth, where it's available to us. So we're mostly water. Water is foundational to health. But this is really, here's the soil and here's some roots. So what's going on in the soil is the organisms called mycorrhiza in the soil and other conditions, pH and whatnot, are causing the soil to break down even further into nutrients that can be absorbed by the tree through the roots and then make the plant flourish, whether it be a tree or a root crop like carrots, potatoes, broccoli, whatever. So this process going on under the surface of the earth, in the soil, is very much akin to what goes on in your gut for absorption. So mycorrhiza in the soil, microbiome in our gut, breaking down. The tree actually assists in digestion. So the foods we eat, fermented foods, probiotics, assist in digestion because it's populating your gut with things that actually break down the food you eat into its basic parts that are then available for absorption through the intestine into your bloodstream and travel throughout the body. And really, when you take in food, there are two components. There are calories and there are nutrients. And none of us today really need calories. We could skip all meals today because we have stored fat, so our body can use or break down fat into calories. But what we really need is nutrients. So when you see that child that is always hungry and, obese, that child has plenty of calories, but that child is nutrient deficient. And when you're nutrient deficient, your brain is smart. It'll trigger your hunger mechanism and hope the heck you eat a food that satisfies that nutrient deficiency. So a very obese child is actually malnourished. That's really the root cause of that problem. So we also live in a conundrum today where our soils have been overused. Our soils have been depleted of important nutrients. So imagine you're eating packaged or junk food, which is derived from these foods, but then it's been further processed to even further strip nutrients. You too are nutrient deficient. And if you have any chronic aches and pains, it's telling me one simple thing. Your repair and recovery is being beaten by wear and tear. And not because wear and tear is so significant, it's because repair and recovery is suppressed or down-regulated because you need nutrients, minerals, and enzymes, and I'll show you how they're all connected, to keep repair and recovery ahead of wear and tear. This isn't aging, this is deterioration. Because, my mom died at 93 and she basically was swimming in our pool, and 2 months later she died. She was living a robust life. No aches and pains. Fine and healthy. Okay, and that's what you should have. And if you don't have good nutrients, you won't have that kind of end game in life. But so, if our soil is depleted, the plants are depleted, and the animals that eat the plants are depleted, and if we eat either of these or both, we're depleted. So let's investigate this a little further and what solutions can be. So mechanized farming leads to food that are depleted of nutrients and rich in pesticides and toxins. The glyphosate, the Roundup-ready crops have a lot of pesticide in them, and they create harm. It's really difficult to, a lot of diseases are emanating from this, but even in that case of toxicity, if you have nutrients for repair and recovery, you may be able to overcome the hazard. If you're nutrient rich, your risk of dying from COVID is going to go down significantly. We'll talk about that in a bit. But what they're doing here is they're spraying on pesticide. But with strong farming like this, they're also stripping nutrients from the soil. But they put fertilizer on, right? Well, they're putting 6 nutrients back on, but we need 20 plus nutrients from the soil. They're not putting the other 15 nutrients back in the soil. So every year, those important essential nutrients our body can't manufacture, we must get from food, are going down and down and down and down. Now I'll give you an example with corn and soy. We rotate the crops on the same plot of land. One puts nitrogen back in, one takes nitrogen out. So your nitrogen stays in balance. But what about the other 20 micronutrients that are being stripped out that are no longer there? So even though that corn looks extremely robust and the ears of corn are nice and plump, think about the obese child. They're nice and plump too, but they're nutrient deficient. Plenty of calories, so the corn grows nice and big, but nutrient deficient. And therefore, you eat the corn, you will be nutrient deficient as well. So we'll pop past this one, but this is from U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it shows, here's from 1900, deaths from heart disease to 1960. Nutrient content minerals in cabbage, lettuce, tomatoes, and spinach. And the nutrients they're looking at are calcium, magnesium, and iron. So as minerals go down, heart disease goes up. Why? We all have inflammation in our vessels. We're breathing oxygen and it's inflammatory. But if we have good repair and recovery, our vessels stay healthy. If we have poor repair and recovery, low minerals, then things like vascular inflammation and vascular disease can slowly develop, just like rubbing the eraser on the back of my hand. It's not a big thing, it's a little thing. That's just on farming. We talked about the 4 to 6 nutrients. Corn is mostly omega-6, grass is omega-3, so since our animals are corn-fed, we're omega-3 deficient. That's a really anti-inflammatory brain supporting nutrient. A lot of different things we need to consider. So let's go to part 2. Here's another chart from the USDA. Here we have 1900 to 2010, 2015, looking at the concentration of important nutrients: phosphorus, selenium, copper, magnesium, cobalt, I'll be talking about that, magnesium, I'll be talking about that, and we can see a downward trend. And then we have the glyphosate and mechanized farming. We see bone deformities, more heart conditions, cancer going up, obesity going up as nutrients go down. Why would obesity go up? Because the food you're eating is deficient in minerals, and so your brain says, I need those minerals, making you hungry. Very simple correlation. This morning we had a lab draw and people drank cranberry juice or orange juice. A lot of sugar in these fruit juices. Fruit is much better. It has all the things that, fiber and things to help you absorb that. So it's actually much better than drinking the juice. But still, what I want to talk about on beverages, I think we all understand to stay away from sweetened beverages and whatnot. But I want to talk about water and its potential impact on health depending on where your water is sourced from. So if you get municipal water, it's most likely sanitized with some type of chlorinating agent, either chlorine or hypochlorite. Either case, it produces chlorine in that water to sanitize it, kill all the bacteria in that water, particularly looking for E. coli, but it's killing all the organisms in that water, so it's clean, purified water. But unfortunately, it still contains the chlorine. Now you drink it, so the water is sanitized. Both your gut and your mouth are full of microbes, part of your microbiome, keeping the saliva working to be anti-infective in your mouth, to keep your periodontal disease down, in your gut to help you absorb, to help you build strong acid. So when you eat something from Guatemala, raspberry for example, it has a little worm on it that you can't see, the strong acid kills it. You don't have that, you don't have that effect. So what happens is every time you drink water from the tap that is not filtered to remove the chlorine, then you're killing a little bit of your microbiome, which is critical to your digestion. So if you have any constipation, bloating, diarrhea, discomfort, reflux, even if it's occasional, you're probably destroying some of your microbiome, and this may be one source. I'm not saying it's the only source, but there's actually a very inexpensive solution. This chlorine is a gas, and will eventually leave the water. So even if you set water on a table and cover it with a paper towel, in 24 hours, 90% of the chlorine's gone, and at that level, it's probably not as antiseptic. And then at day 2, you can rotate jugs of water, leave them open so the chlorine gas will leave, it'll be 95% chlorine free at that point, and probably not harmful to your microbiome at that point. Let's look at a little history of health now. So this is the Nile Valley, Egypt, Mediterranean, and this is the fertile plain, so-called. But way down here in Kenya is Lake Victoria. Something very unusual happens with Lake Victoria every year. It overflows and washes silt and waters from the lake down and floods this area. Essentially, it's fertilizing that area every year before planting season. So that's why the Nile Valley has sustained civilization, an intelligent civilization, because of the minerals in the soil for 5,000 to 10,000 years. Let's look in contrast to America's farmland. We have this huge drainage basin where the rains come, the water flows off the land, bringing all the nutrients with it into the Gulf of Mexico. Now that would be fine if we allowed the land to sit, lay fallow, and over time, the bacteria in this land will start breaking down the rocks and the soil into absorbable components that the plants can then absorb. But when we farm that land year in and year out, mechanized with huge amounts of high density crops, we're really stripping that soil. So, and then in California, too, another fertile valley, the Sierra Nevadas, the water's all running into the Pacific. So it's a big problem. But why is it a problem? I talk about minerals, minerals, minerals. What are minerals? What do they do? Let's go over this right now. So minerals are involved in making vitamins and making vitamins work. Minerals help reduce toxicity from heavy metals. Minerals are what drive enzymes. And enzymes are the catalyst in your body that makes things happen, makes your cells work, make you produce energy. So think about your car, internal combustion. You're burning gasoline, but you need the spark and you need high heat to keep that gasoline burning, okay? Produce a lot of heat. We don't have a lot of heat in our body. The enzymes lowers the activation barrier to make these important reactions in our body to drive our energy cycles, to repair tissue, happen very easily. And without enzymes and the minerals that make enzymes work, your energy can be low. Your repair and recovery can be low. Your healing can be poor. You can have migraines, joint pain, chronic fatigue. All those things can be tied back to the mineral in the vitamin, reducing toxicity, and making enzymes work. I'll go a little bit into the mechanism for you folks that want a little health and science 2.0. So a vitamin. What is a vitamin? Fuzzy picture, but it's just a big molecule, okay? And this happens to be B12. And in the middle right here is a mineral called cobalt. Cobalt is a trace mineral, and it's not being put back on your soils. It's not one of the 4 to 6 that's being put back on. So B12 is, I believe it's synthesized, we bring cobalt up in the plant, and it's the B12 itself is somewhat deficient in plants, so vegans are B12 deficient, but animals that eat the plant and get the cobalt from the trace minerals from the soil can produce B12, and then we eat the animal meat and we get our B12. So if we're cobalt deficient, somewhere along that food chain we're not getting enough B12. And B12, we have a lot of dementia. In England now, dementia is the #1 early killer that causes early mortality. And B12 is one such vitamin that appears to be helpful in preventing, not treating, but preventing dementias, for example. Toxicity. Let's look at lead. For example, vitamin C, certain vegetables will grab the lead and pull it out. Vitamin C will pull it out. But how does lead express toxicity? Why is lead toxic? It's not the metal lead, the bare metal lead. It's like your lead acid battery. You create lead ions, and those are toxic. Why are they toxic? This is an enzyme, a big, big protein molecule, and in the middle we have this little center here, or even in the edge. And that edge, that green thing here, is a mineral, like cobalt, like manganese, like molybdenum, trace things. Even in hemoglobin, ferritin molecule, it's iron. Or the ferritin complex, it's iron. So, but let's just say we're deficient in something like molybdenum, which makes this enzyme do a job, and we're molybdenum deficient, but we're being exposed to lead. So lead, that's a similar size of molybdenum, comes in. Guess what it just did? It deactivated that enzyme. And if that enzyme is important to energy, tissue repair and recovery, joint repair and recovery, then you have a degenerative state. And that's how lead can express toxicity. But more importantly, that's how minerals can prevent lead toxicity, because believe me, the enzyme is designed for the molybdenum, not for the lead. But lead will sneak in there if the better fit of molybdenum is not present. So the way I look at it is, our body, we have our DNA. And all our DNA is very similar, within 1%. You know, a rat is 85% similar to man. So, you know, it just shows you that there's not much variation. There are subtle variations in DNA. But DNA, like a house blueprint, doesn't build the house. We need the worker bees to build the house. So an enzyme, in the context of building your house, that's the carpenter doing the work, carrying out the orders or the direction or the prescription of your DNA to put your body together based on your blueprint. Okay, that's how important enzymes are, and that's how important minerals are, because they make the enzymes active. So you could take just a mineral supplement, right, as a solution? Well, not quite so simple, because when we take in minerals, we don't have the same capacity as plants or other animals to produce certain things, so we have to get them from food, and those are called essential nutrients. So it's not just about taking mineral supplement. Vitamin supplement too will help, but digestion is very critical, because you are what you absorb, not what you eat. So if your digestion's not good, then you're still in a problem. And the number one thing that's hard to digest, guess what? Minerals. We're deficient in them. And then if we have any gut problems whatsoever, not enough strong acid, not enough microorganisms, then we're not absorbing the minerals. Double whammy. And that's why Americans lead the world in chronic conditions. It's just that simple. So what Dr. Maynard Murray did is he said, there are instances of where the plant, even though seemingly healthy, is deficient in elements, which are minerals, and gives rise to disease in animals. So I already explained the plump corn and the plump child. Plenty of calories, lack of nutrients. So what Dr. Murray did, a very elegant experiment. He went up into Illinois and isolated 3 10-acre fields, and planted. On one he did nothing. On one he did conventional fertilizers, and one he did sea salt solids. So he mined the ocean, probably right around an estuary or something, and grabbed the sea salt solids and fertilized the soil with that. Then he planted on each of those fields. And he measured all kinds of attributes of the plants. And one thing in the sea salt solids group, they were much more pest resistant. So the excess nutrients from the sea salt solids, mainly minerals, allowed that plant to produce anti-pest agents. So you didn't have to use as many pesticides. Then he went to the next level. Let's see. What he found is vitamin A and vitamin C were found in much greater quantity in the salt crop. He didn't add vitamin A and vitamin C to the soil. He added nutrients. And the plant produced vitamin A and vitamin C. So you have to have the nutrients in the soil for the plants we eat to have not only minerals for our own enzymes, but for the vitamins and other nutrients that we do not synthesize in our own body. But what he also did, which I didn't put up here, and here's his book, Sea Energy Agriculture, is he fed the plants to animals and studied the animals. So the no action field, the traditional fertilizer field, and the sea salt solids. And what he showed is that the animals, for example, eggs, the chicken ovulated more, the egg yolk was richer orange, had more choline, had more nutrients. So everything was better when you have the right nutrients for the plant, and then obviously by reference and inference us. So what can you do? Yes, you can supplement, that'll help. Make sure your gut's working well. It's one of the main things we work on in our program. We don't ignore little symptoms. Your gut's on a continuum too, and we want it optimal. Organically grown. Grow your own, and my recommendation for growing your own, if you even have a small plot, is herbs and spices. It turns out that herbs and spices concentrate nutrients better than most other plants. Alfalfa is a plant that goes very deep, has very deep roots, 10, 20 feet. So there's not a lot of deficiency down there. So alfalfa will have much more nutrients when we're growing on relatively stripped soil. Here's just a couple more slides here. Another reason why, so the substantiation of the importance of nutrients. Mid-Victorian England, 1870. Analysis of those folks. If a child lived to age 5 in 1870, there was a very good chance that child was going to live longer than British people do today. How is that possible? Well, back then they may have died from 0 to 5 age because of infectious diseases, tuberculosis, poor hygiene, things of that nature. But once they got past 5 and their immune system became mature, they had lots of nutrients to sustain their life, because these folks all had a little garden plot, raised chickens, ate the whole chicken, made broth from the chicken carcass, ate the heart, ate the liver, high in nutrient density. So even though they were poor and living well before pharmaceuticals, they had 1/10 the degenerative diseases of ours. Why? Because it's degenerative. It's slowly and insidiously your body is deteriorating. But if repair and recovery is there from good nutrients, that process is significantly slow. And you may die disease-free from just natural aging. Another nutrient, French paradox. It's actually American paradox, because you can see that we live shorter lives and spend a lot more on healthcare. We're an outlier. But the French eat the most saturated fats, and the American Heart Association says don't eat saturated fats. They're slowly changing their tune, but even 2 years ago, demonized coconut oil, saturated fat. Yet the French eat probably about 2.5 times the saturated fats that Americans do. And they smoke twice as much as Americans, not a good thing for heart disease, yet they have 1/3 the heart disease. How is that possible? See, saturated fats are anti-inflammatory and are involved in repair and recovery, and most degenerative processes are inflammatory, so you have an anti-inflammatory, then you're going to repair and recover better, or there's going to be less to repair and recover because you have that soothing healing process provided by the saturated fats. So what the American Heart Association basically said is we're going to ignore 55 million people. They don't really count in our studies. The other thing is, here's American farming, corn, so the meat has a lot of omega-6s. Grass. In Europe, the grass has a lot of omega-3s. The meat has a lot of omega-3s. Omega-3s are very anti-inflammatory fatty acids, and you get omega-3s from grass-fed meat and from fish in particular, but not necessarily the farm-raised fish, which are being fed corn, which is omega-6. Little conundrum there. But what does the French plate look like? Not only are they eating a lot of cheeses and healthy saturated fats, but they're eating a lot of high nutrient dense foods. A lot of vegetables, farm-raised vegetables, or organically grown vegetables. And this is pate, liver. Highest in nutrient density of all the foods, most nutrients per unit amount. Almost done, folks. What we're looking at here is 1909. We had 4 omega-6s to 1 omega-3. We were healthy. 1985, we're heading in the wrong direction. 25 omega-6s, 1 omega-3. What is omega-6? Corn oil in your cooking, vegetable oil in your cooking, soybean oil at fast food restaurants, soybean oil in any fried foods at almost any restaurants. Anytime you see corn syrup, which is the predominant sweetener in so many things today, in the Coke, in the coffee creamer, omega-6s. So we're flooded with omega-6s, and the trend's obvious. And this ratio here is highly correlated to inflammation in the brain, brain health, sleeplessness, migraines, headaches, depression, mood disorders, and moving even into Alzheimer's disease. Recommendations for supplementation: cod liver oil. Start bringing that omega-6, omega-3 ratio back into range. Magnesium, very important, one of the most important deficient minerals. Bringing inflammation down in the brain, in your joints, helping you sleep better. Multi-mineral, obvious, the whole discussion today. Vitamin D, everybody listening is vitamin D deficient, unless you're taking at least 5,000 IU per day, period. Otherwise, you're deficient. Your doctor may say you're sufficient, but they're saying you're sufficient for bone health. When vitamin D goes up to the level we want, your cancer risk goes way down as well. So that's what we're looking at. Organically grown, add organ meats. If you don't eat organ meats, seeds and nuts are very high in nutrients, very high, just like the herbs and spices. Fermented foods, because it helps you digest. You are what you digest. So we always want to be replenishing that microbiome, those organisms down in your gut that are part of sort of the assembly line of digestion. You have to have many, many good pieces in line to get digestion to be good. Grow your own patio plants. If you have some wood ash, sprinkle it on your soil lightly, because the trees have deep roots, so they have all kinds of minerals. And you know, the patio plants, you grow the herbs and spices. Every little bit counts. And lastly, I just finished with my resource page. I'm from Health Revival Partners, running the Viking and National Wellness Program. And if you go to that website and click on books, I've written 3 books, published many papers, and have all kinds of slides and other resources up there in case you're interested. So, you know, minerals play a huge role. We get minerals from meat. We get minerals from plants. There's a deficiency there. Make the best choice you can, and anything that's processed is going to be mineral deficient. To keep your repair and recovery pathways working, reduce chronic disease, and live a longer, healthier life. Thank you very much.